Okay, and here we go, our sharp graduation. This technique, okay, and here we go, our sharp graduated technique. I'll begin on the left side, do the side areas. I'll comb the hair straight out, and here I'm cutting in quite a high graduated shape. What I mean by high graduation is that graduation exists mathematically and three-dimensionally on a head shape from 1 degree to 89 degrees. Anything above 89, then we start to layer. So here on the sides, I'm cutting in a graduated angle at about like 75 degrees. So it's pretty high angle. And what this does, it gives me a slight amount of weight, but it's not so bulky. And it will allow me to give more structural support to the top portion of the haircut once I get there. So again, working in really clean sections, stand exactly in front of what you're cutting. Remember, your body position plays a key factor in cutting perfect, cutting clean, cutting sharp, and cutting fast. Now always work in small, manageable sections. So notice how this section is much larger than my actual fingers. So even before I go in to cut that section, I know I'll have to break it into two smaller pieces. And now as I work through the back area, I begin the nape, I comb the hair straight out, and here I'm cutting in a graduated line. I angle my fingers gives me a length that's longer through the nape and a bit shorter as I start to near the ears. And each section I'll progressively elevate slightly with anticipation to meet my graduation that I just cut on the left side. Now as I'm cutting this back area, remember how I said earlier that your body position is really important? So here I'm standing at about between her shoulder and her occipital bone. And now my sections here start to pivot so I can meet up with the side graduation that I cut earlier. And as I'm cutting, I always like to have my eyes like right where I'm working. In this position, I can take into account so many more details because of the simple fact that my eyes are positioned to allow me to see these details. Far too often, cutters are in the salon and they don't move their body around too much or their chair, and the area that they're working on is way below their point of view. So what I mean, if you're cutting at an elevation like the hip, but your eyes are like 2 feet away, you really won't see much. Now working through the right side of the head, I'm going in and I'm cutting the exact same angle. So it's about a 75 degree acute angle. Working small, manageable sections. When your intention is super strong, you'll find that you really don't have to comb out the same section too many times. Because again, when your intention is strong, it's basically already done in your mind. And then you just have to go and execute it physically, which allows for much less of a margin of error when you're technically doing your haircut. Now again, I'll work the side panel to where the head starts to round. And next section again, comb the hair super clean from the roots to your guideline. If there's any snag in the hair that you comb, once you cut that shape, that snag will equal a longer uneven length. Now through the back of the right side, I take a piece of my guideline through the left, and here I continue to cut in my graduated section. With each progressive section, I elevate the hair slightly. Make sure as you're cutting, you can always see a super clean, clear guideline. If your guideline's messy, go back and clean that up. Because if your guideline is messy, it's because you have small errors in it. And if you continue using the same guideline with errors in it, each section after those errors will increase 100%. So a lot of times you'll find that a big mistake starts off really small, and at the end of the day you still have to go back and check off that little mess. So it's better to be on top of your game and handle your challenges when they're small, because it takes a lot less time and effort. It just needs a sharper eye and attention to detail. And as you pick up this habit of cutting super clean, it'll become organic. It'll feel natural within a short amount of time. Okay, so now I'm working the area through the occipital bone to the crown. I'm combing the hair straight out. And again, notice how my fingers are angled. I'm cutting in my graduated shape. And here I'm combing each section square. That means straight out with no over direction. And here I'll incorporate the graduation through the occipital bone area and the sides. So my two prior shapes will meet, and it'll allow for my occipital bone to nape area to become even that much stronger, because it's getting a lot more structural support. When two major sections meet, you build weight, or you build structural integrity. So that means you get more fullness, more movement. But the best way to execute this is to always have a strong game plan, like know exactly what you're doing before you're actually cutting and why you're doing it. So again, scissors, fingers, elbows are the exact same angle that we're cutting here. My eyes are directly in front of what I'm cutting, because this is the only position where I can see everything. So I'm just checking in, I'm connecting my panels to the side and below the occipital bone area. So now as I work through the top area, I'll comb out the center section, and here I just comb the hair straight up, and I'll over direct slightly, and I'll just work off the guideline that's pre-existing in the back. Now you'll find that when your sections to the sides and the two sections to the back are executed perfectly, that once you reach the top area, it's a lot easier to cut. Everything just rolls out smoother because you already have that hard work in place to give you the support and a super clear guideline through the top. And as I connect this top area, I'm elevating the hair quite high because I want it to fall softer. And always remember, the amount of elevation greatly affects the overall aesthetic. So what I mean by that is that if I were connecting the top area and it over directed like more to the opposite side, my end result would fall much heavier. If I wanted a super light feel, I could comb the hair even more towards a straight 90 degree from the root. Okay, as we're working forward, again, my eyes are always in front of what I'm cutting. Notice how my stroke count is in control because I know exactly the shape I intend to cut. And there we go, we're just connecting shapes just a bit through the fringe. And now I'll do the exact same technique on the opposite side. So here I connect, working with my guideline through the back, and my sections to the top, they're slightly diagonal. And I make sure that each slightly diagonal section incorporates my guideline through the back and a piece from the sides. So that way I can ensure that everything is technically checking into the top area. So we're cool, calm, collected. Watch your stroke count. Make sure you comb the hair super clean, connecting in the sides and the top. Okay, next, progressive. slightly diagonal section. Remember, I'm combing the hair up, and I'll over direct slightly to my right, making sure that I always connect the length through the sides. And as you're cutting, look at it as a game. Make it fun, okay? Like combing out hair from roots to your guidelines, super clean. In the beginning, it may be a bit more challenging because you're not accustomed to this habit. With a tiny amount of practice, intention, this scooping technique will become natural. So you put in a little effort in the beginning, and all of a sudden it's a natural habit, like breathing. It just happens. But first things first, if you can't comb the hair perfectly clean, you're really not cutting it clean. It doesn't matter how clean the hair between your fingers looks when you're cutting, following your guide. If there's swivels or swerves and the hair is not combed perfectly, that equates to longer uneven lengths. So after the finish, the blow dry, I'll go back and I'm just cleaning out my outline shape. So here I'm just cutting in a nice square trucky line. I want to show off the clean geometry of the shape. So if I have a little bit of like a sideburn there, it'll take away from the overall aesthetic. So here I'm going for something really strong, clean, techy, sporty, low maintenance, wash and wear. And same technique through the opposite side. And again, working with details, make sure that your eyes are exactly in front of what you're cutting. In the salon, I like to look at my shapes from multiple angles. I can even swivel the chair around and check my shape out in the mirror. It makes your eyes stronger, and it gives you the more perspectives you're looking at your close to finished result at, the more areas you can visually see that you have to go and clean up. I can always clean a haircut up while my client's in the chair. Once she leaves and she goes home, it's game over. And that's my reputation. That's your standard. So make sure that everything you do in the salon before it walks out that door is up to par. Because again, one of your greatest marketing tools and advertisement is your actual work. Is your client wearing your technique, your skills, your brain, your effort. So here I'm just cutting in a slightly curved V shape. When I work in V's, I don't like to have a hard angle in the center. I like a nice curve because it's harder to achieve. It looks better and it grows out softer. Now just checking in the fringe here. Okay, and there we have it. Sharp graduation. Enjoy.